Hey everyone, it's me, Christine Job, the host of Flourish in the Foreign, the podcast that celebrates and elevates and affirms the voices and stories of Black women living and thriving abroad. And I'm here on Instagram to chat with you all about the vaccine rollout that has happened all around the world. And I want to talk about this topic because, when COVID first happened, if you guys listen to the show, I asked a lot of my guests about how COVID had affected their lives living abroad, and they shared their experiences. But I think as we've now discovered, COVID isn't just one thing, right? It has evolved to so many different things. It has been a really interesting way for us to analyze and to really, discern, for lack of a better word, countries and their responses to it. COVID gave us the ability to really see how health systems really acted and really were set up in times of pressure. It really allowed us to see how the political engine worked in a country, when the political engine stopped or at least paused to deal with, a health crisis. It helped us to see how this, governments really treated foreigners and immigrants. Do they kick you out of the country? Does that happen to some people? It also let us see how governments really reacted to economies as well. So another part of this kind of analysis I think we're all kind of working through as we live abroad is now seeing how do these countries, how are they handling this vaccine rollout? And how do you feel about it? Because, I live in Spain normally, I'm based in Spain, and it has been such an interesting tale to really talk about, from lockdown to restrictions being, lessened to, back and forth. Spain has had 4 waves of COVID, so it has been really, really interesting. So I want to talk to as many of you as possible about the COVID vaccine rollout as possible. And I would love to talk and hear from you all that are living abroad. So if you are interested in joining me in this conversation, just request and I will bring you on, and we can really have a really deep conversation about your impressions of how your country of residence has handled COVID and also the vaccine response as opposed to your home country. My home country is the United States. I'm currently stateside, and the states just manhandled this whole situation at first, but they have really handled this vaccine rollout quite well. So it's been really, really interesting. All right, I see Adelia is here. Hey, Adelia. If you don't want to join me, that's totally fine. I'm going to bring Adelia on. But everyone else who's watching, please put in the comments where you are watching from. If you're abroad, tell me where you're watching from. If you're wanting to go abroad, tell me where you want to go and what has been your impressions of the COVID handling and the vaccine rollout to the country that you want to immigrate to. Let me know. And if you have any questions, definitely put it in the question box below. But I really want us to have a really robust conversation about it, because I think it's really important. Too often people just think, especially if you're Americans, I'll say, it's my only perspective, they think, everywhere else in the world has better healthcare and everything else. But then you go into practice, and I'm really curious to know, has that been the truth of the situation? Because healthcare means so much more. We could not have ever predicted a global pandemic would be something that we'd say, hey, can Spain handle a global pandemic well? All right, enough about me. Let us go here. Maybe? Did I add you, Adelia? Oh, here we go.
Okay, I need to turn my camera around. Sorry. There we go. There we go.
Can you hear me?
can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you so much for agreeing to join me in this conversation. I just feel like there's so much stuff to talk about, right? Like when it comes to COVID and being abroad, I feel like, I don't know, I get sick and tired of talking about it, but it affects your life. So I can't stop talking about it. So let's do this. Adelia, tell everyone who doesn't know who you are, tell us a little bit about yourself and where you currently live.
I currently live in Mexico City. I moved abroad 5 years ago, initially to Tegucigalpa, Honduras. And in the meantime, I've been in Mexico, China, Kuwait. And so, yeah, that's where I am, where I'm from the US. And I don't know what else to say.
Also, she has an amazing podcast, Picky Girl
Oh,
Travel
yeah, that.
channel that is like skyrocketing. If you want to learn all about living in Mexico, the real deal, and managing your money abroad, that's a whole nother live we got to do. So definitely check out her information, all that she has if you have not. But let's get into it, okay? Because this is also really interesting for you, for all of you who do not know. Adelia was episode, I think, 3 or 4 on the podcast, Flourish on the Foreign. And when we recorded, you were stuck in China. And, you know,
Yeah.
I would see you on Instagram still trying to get out of China. And so now, like a year later, you're now dealing with COVID and vaccine rollout in Mexico. So briefly, like, tell us the evolution of your experience.
I finally got out of China in July, about a month later than I should. Lots of delays, lots of expensive delays. And when I got to Mexico, the country of Mexico has a stoplight system that goes from red, orange, yellow, green. And at the time that I landed in Mexico City, they were technically still red, about to go to orange. And depending on what color stoplight you get, that mandated what businesses could operate, how much occupancy they could have, all of that. And basically for the last 8-9 months, Mexico City has hovered between orange and red. By Christmas, they were completely locked down in the red. Hospital occupancy in early January was like at 92%. It was kind of scary because the reality was, if anything happened to you, you had an allergic reaction, you broke your arm, you had a heart attack, there was no hospital that would take you, or if they would take you, they wanted about 300 grand USD. No, wait, I take that back. It was 300,000 pesos, which I think is at 15,000 USD. It's about 20 pesos to the dollar, but it was a lot of money.
Yeah.
It was a lot of money. And that's if they had room. They were taking it case by case, and literally you had to be able to pay that cash. So January, February were really scary, at least to me, because, you know, I just kept thinking, if I get COVID, I'm just SOL, and we'll have to figure out how to make this work staying in my apartment, because there literally was no hospital you could go to. Just last week before, we finally made it to yellow for the first time. And I just saw a thing today that says by June 7th, they expect we're going to be green. So it's like we've kind of come full circle. It's been interesting to say the least. But there are states in Mexico that have been virtually green the whole time. Mexico City was not one of them, but it's a city of 21 million people. You can't do, pandemics just don't work in cities this size.
Yeah. So tell me about the vaccine rollout in Mexico. Have you been able to get vaccinated? Was it in Mexico? How's that going?
My plan was to get vaccinated in Mexico because I have residency. When they unveiled their plan, it was for Mexicans and people with residency. They started with doctors and healthcare workers late December, and there was there was a calculator you could go to, and I think I went to it and I put in my age and all of that, and there were like 23 million people ahead of me. And at one point, it said I could get the vaccine in like 13 years. It fluctuated because of the supply of the vaccine. Like Moderna is not approved here. Neither is Johnson and Johnson. Pfizer is approved. That's what the initial shipments they got were. And then AstraZeneca, Sputnik, and I don't know the name of the Chinese one. Those are approved. And so my plan, before I knew which vaccines would be available, was to get vaccinated here in Mexico. After they did the first responders, they said, okay, we're going to start with people over 60, blah, blah, blah. I looked, 40-year-olds were supposed to be in April. They're still giving second doses to people over 60. If that gives you any idea, it's very slow. That's here in Mexico City. Each state in Mexico is doing it their own way. I have heard that in the state of Michoacan, they can't give away doses of the vaccine because nobody wants it, because they don't trust the government. Here, it's kind of mixed. They just started this week with people over 50 to get their first dose. And then Mexico City is sort of like a state divided into 16 counties. So each county, like they're doing 8 counties, they're doing people over 50. And then in a couple of weeks, they'll move to the other 8. And then they've also added in the last couple of weeks, teachers, which seems to be part of a scheme to reopen schools by June 7th. Because technically, schools cannot open physically unless we are at the green stoplight, which we are not. So I don't know if teachers are lining up for that. They have also added pregnant women. So basically, if you're pregnant, if you are a teacher, or if you are over 50, you can somewhat get the vaccine here, but you don't get a choice. You get what you get.
Yeah.
And that was an issue for me. Because of my time in China, didn't want anything Chinese. I've seen too much. And my preference was Pfizer or Moderna. So I didn't know what I was going to do. And then ended up, well, I don't even know if did I answer your question?
You did. I just want to welcome everyone who has joined the chat. Thank you guys so much for joining the chat. If you are abroad or abroad, you have thoughts about how the COVID response was handled in your country of residence, or the vaccine rollout was handled, join us in this conversation. I'll bring you on stage. I'll bring you on these squares. I don't know what it's called. I'll bring you on and we can have a conversation. If you do not want to do that, that's fine. Please put where you are located in the comments. Let me know where you're located, how things have been going for you, things like that. I see some of the people, hey everyone, let us know. Let us actually have a great dialogue, because the thing is that COVID surprised the heck out of everyone. But I think it's a whole different level of surprise when you are not in your home country and you are like, what's going on? And things don't seem to be getting better. It's a whole nother kind of level to it. So let's continue though, Adelia. Tell me, so are you vaccinated? Have you gotten vaccinated? Are you still waiting?
I am vaccinated. I feel funny saying this, but I was going to follow the rules. I wasn't going to cash in any of my privilege. And I was really intent on waiting my turn here. And what's funny is a couple of months ago, my landlord came to get the rent and he was like, are you vaccinated? And I was like, no, my age group isn't up. And he was like, I took my wife and my son across the border to a HEB in Texas, and they got vaccinated. He was like, you need to. And then WhatsApps me the website he used to find the vaccine. And I assumed there would be this whole process doing it in the United States. And this was after the US had instituted that you had to have a COVID test. And I didn't want to go anywhere to get a COVID test because I see all those people in line and I think they're in line because they all think they have COVID. I don't want to be around those people.
Yeah.
So the more I thought about it, and then I was like, I don't get vaccine choice here in Mexico. I was trying to figure out how I could qualify in the US because at the time you supposedly either needed to be a certain age or have certain health issues. I ended up going back to Texas and I got vaccinated. I went specifically to get vaccinated. And I have some feelings about that because that speaks to the incredible privilege I have that a lot of people I know don't have.
But we're going to get into that because I think that is a conversation that we have to have, especially as Americans abroad, because we have to file taxes. We have to file taxes, and no matter how many years you are abroad, even if you don't, even if you don't make yourself a tax resident in the United States, you are all abroad all the time.
You are always a tax resident in the United States until you give up citizenship.
Exactly. We have the right to vote, but we didn't necessarily have access to the vaccines and the public health. So I think it's a conversation I definitely want us to have for sure. If y'all have thoughts about that, put it in the comments. If you want to join the conversation, put on some makeup if you feel weird about it, or don't. Who cares? Come on.
Or don't.
Come on. And conversation because it's so important. But I do want to share with you all my experience in Spain. So as I said before, I'm stateside right now, but it was completely non-vaccine related. Actually, I had a family emergency and I was out of Spain. I had a 4-day turnaround, so I had to do all the things. But when COVID first hit Spain, I knew it was going to hit it hard because I had been watching the news, as I do, from January. And when I first saw what was happening in China, I was like, this is probably going to be a problem. But when it got to Italy, I was like, no, we're going to be decimated for sure because of so many reasons. Some are controversial, fight me, I guess. But one, Spain, they don't have a lot of personal space, right? We do dos besos, so no personal space. And not just my opinion, the opinion of many other people on the podcast and on the internet. Hygiene is cultural, people. I'm going to say it. Hygiene is cultural. How frequently people wash their hands, what they wash their hands with is also cultural. And for me, taking that into consideration, I was like, this is going to hit this country hard because the hygiene wasn't what I was used to personally. So when it did come to Spain and they were like, we're going to do a 2-week lockdown, I was like, okay, 2 weeks. We couldn't go anywhere, which was interesting watching, from the United States, looking to my friends and my sister and everybody, just like, what are you guys doing? What do you mean you can't leave your house? I'm like, there's a global pandemic killing everyone.
There's a pandemic.
Yes. People are dying. And they're like, really? That's interesting. So being in severe lockdown, couldn't go anywhere. And even, I live in Barcelona, so in the part of Barcelona I live is close to the sea, so it was actually probably the most relaxed part of the whole situation. Couldn't go anywhere except for the grocery store, stuff like that. They eased it up in the summertime, which was a bad idea because it created a second wave, and then we had a third wave for the Christmas holiday and a fourth wave. For me, my experience in Spain has been a government in a situation that they just don't want to take responsibility, basically. They don't want to be responsible for people missing Christmas or or anything. Like they don't want to be the ones like holding the bag. So they basically, the central government released all of they basically made all states responsible for their own restrictions. And so then we have 17 different restrictions going on in the country. So one state will be like, y'all can't come in here at all unless you're a resident. Other state, like Madrid, would be like, oh, you're French or you're German and your whole country is locked down. You can come and spend your money here. It has been such a shit show, in my opinion. Spain has not handled it very well.
Remember, Mexico never closed the border. Mexico has been the place outside of, I think, the Dominican Republic that everybody can come here. That has not changed since day one.
And that's what's nuts, because you still see those Tulum and whatever. And there's a pandemic going on. There's a pandemic going on. And so, but I think these economies that have, especially certain parts of countries that really depend on tourism, they don't want to be shut down. That's the biggest thing with Spain. They were really fighting to open up. And it was like, we can't handle it. We can't handle tourists. I mean, the Minister of Tourism, she said like in January, and I will always remember this because I think she made this announcement on the same week. It was a week after Epiphany, which is big in Spain. It was a week after Epiphany, and I think it was like the U.S. insurrection happened. There was a blizzard in Madrid, and then she was like, oh, we're getting vaccines, and we're going to open up for tourism by spring. And I was just like, no, we're not. And that has been the case. The EU has really had a lot of severe issues getting vaccines. I think it has been bungled for the most part because of this Brexit fighting thing too going on.
I have some thoughts about that. If you think about it from a historical standpoint, this was the first true test of the EU. It's one thing to cooperate when we're, mining coal, making steel, making financial things. This was the first time that governments, individual state governments, needed to coordinate, share information, work together. And I think what we saw was they don't know how to do that. Not especially when it's something that you've got to do like rather quickly, or at least the former social studies teacher here, when I observed what was happening in Europe, that was the thing that stuck out to me was, yeah, y'all been a union for 50 years, but you still haven't integrated the way that you would need to address an issue like this. And I know it's complicated because you're talking about separate countries, but you want them to play nice and work together, and that's a hard thing to learn to do.
Yeah, you're spot on, because the thing is that they say EU, but then you have the Germans being like, but I think AstraZeneca, I think, is what's developed in Germany. But we created this, so why we gotta share with all y'all? Like, this is ours. And Angela Merkel had to be like, no, we're part of the union. And she got a lot of flack from Germans who were like, F those people. We're all European.
Yeah, no, I don't think when the idea of this, because it started as an economic union. Over time, it morphed into something more political, and the first test of that was the Syrian refugee crisis. And that showed us that they really weren't at a place where they were like, oh, we're like this. And then this was something that they obviously needed to work together on, and they could not, they would not. That was my observation from afar.
Yes, and it was almost comical because, they're also dealing with, at the end of the year, the Brexit agreement, and the UK was like nationalism over everything, and now look at them, which is affirming their whole Brexit stance, which is not a good look. It has been insanity. I mean, I think they just said, okay, vaccinated non-EU people can come into Europe, but I'm like, how are you going to know that they're vaccinated?
I saw that today, and that I was just talking to somebody last night about it. That has been a concern to me because on the American side, it's just, I don't want to say it's a shit show, but when it comes to the validity of somebody showing you a vaccine card, they're handing those things out blank. So, yeah. So if I'm a government and I want to be sure that these people have actually had the vaccine, what are they going to do? Is there going to be some database? Because if so, right now, we're not at that place. So I don't know how that's going to work. And I definitely feel, and I'm hearing from a lot of people who are vaccinated that like, I got vaccinated so I don't have to take a COVID test. So they're expecting getting vaccinated to pay off in this way so they can travel. But I don't see, if you're a country's government, I don't see how you can have faith in somebody, at least from the United States. I don't see how you can have faith in somebody showing you a vaccination card.
No, not at all. When I landed in Atlanta, the very next day, I got my first dose, which I was like, this would never happen in Spain. I know if anybody who's watching from Spain,
Same.
our age group, September, October, I don't know, like we're not getting vaccinated anytime soon. But when I got my card, I was like, this is a piece of card stock
Bootleg.
with no,
It's bootleg.
yeah, like with no identifying numbers, except it has a number of the, I guess, the bottle of Pfizer or whatever. I was like, I thought it was gonna make have a QR code or like some kind of release where you could be like, I want you to release my information to like the transportation, whoever, because I gotta fly and I don't want to do like I did it, right? I would have signed that because also they know everything. Like, you know, the people who are like, I don't want them to track us. Are you joking? You were already tracked. What are you talking
No, I'm very concerned about that, and I'm thinking like, what is it going to mean? Am I going to have to take a trip back to the U.S. so that I can get whatever the approved version to show that I've been vaccinated, whatever that is? Because I have very little faith in this little card I have from Walgreens, where they literally they typed out some numbers and then they glued that onto the card. I would not accept this if somebody tried to give it to me.
And what's also very, I think it's just clearly everyone, I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer. There is going to be, I think we all know there's going to be another wave of COVID. If y'all thought it's up, at least in Europe, for sure, because everybody wants to travel, everybody wants to go, people are vaccinated, people are not vaccinated. In France, a wealthy country, they're actually doing free PCR tests. So they're going to be checking you, making sure you don't got COVID. In Spain, a non-wealthy country, they're not. They're just like, come and spend money. And you don't have to quarantine, you don't worry about it, just buy things. Like, this is, it's mind-blowing. Oh no. Okay, so hopefully we'll get Adelia back. I think the internet is good. I think it's my internet. Okay. Let me know if you can see me, hear me. Okay. Let me do this. Oh, hey, Tiffany, I see you. Did it work?
I don't know what happened.
I don't know what happened either, but I agree. I agree that it is going to be such an interesting situation. And what I wanted to also talk about, so thank you guys so much for tuning in. Again, if you guys want to join, just press request to join the conversation. Or if you want to just tell me where you are in the world and how the COVID response has been in your part of the world, how the vaccine response has been in your part of the world, let us know in the comments. Like, this is a dialogue. We're trying to really share information. Because something else I wanted to talk about is, you know, us being Americans, we have our thoughts about healthcare. And a lot of reasons people go abroad, or one of the benefits that people enjoy abroad, is generally maybe better access to healthcare. But what I think that this has shown is that it is very nuanced. Is your healthcare system really robust? Will it really save your life? Do you have access to it? Because, and I say that because, you know, in Spain, I have a private healthcare insurance, which is wonderful most of the time. I think it's a little bit less burdened now. But when I asked at the beginning of the year, and I've been asking throughout the year, I was like, when do you guys think you're going to get vaccines? Because in certain states, you can't necessarily just automatically get on universal health care. It's done state by state in Spain. And in Catalonia, they're like, nah, girl, you can't. So I'm like, okay, cool, respect that. But when can I get a vaccine? Because I'm paying this premium and stuff like that. They have no idea. So it's like, it's so many different layers to this kind of situation, right? So how has your just thoughts and impression of the Mexican healthcare system changed at all?
Yes and no. When I retired from teaching and was like, I'm going to live full time in Mexico, my plan was to get on the state healthcare plan, which it is not perfect by any stretch of the imagination and has many of the issues you think about when you think of state healthcare. But it was going to cost me literally pennies, which I couldn't get coverage. I couldn't get similar coverage in the US for the same amount. However,
Wait, can
that
you
was
mute yourself because you're having some feedback? No worries. Okay, keep on going, Billy.
that was pre-pandemic. Needless to say, when the pandemic hit Mexico, the state healthcare system was decimated. And so I sat here in November and was like, okay, we got to think of plan B. And I got connected with a local insurance agent here, and I got private Mexican health insurance that thankfully I've not had to use. Health insurance here is a little different than it is in the US. Primarily, it's meant to cover emergencies, not preventative stuff, because for most of that stuff, you can come out of pocket and it's not that big of a deal. But like my Spanish teacher lives in Honduras. So as jacked up as things may have been here, they were 10 times worse there. Okay, like she would ask in the course of our class, and I'm practicing Spanish, she'd ask like, are there any vaccines there? And I was like, yeah, they're giving it to doctors. She was like, there are none here. Like, there is no timeline when they will ever have vaccines there. So it has given me a sense of, like, okay, I'm not in the worst situation, but I'm not in the best situation either. And again, like I told you, I was willing to wait my turn to get the vaccine. And it really had never occurred to me to go back to the US to get it. Like, I was like, oh, I'm not doing that. And then, my landlord got in my ear. And then I was like you said, I pay taxes. Like, I'm entitled to this. Now, one thing I will say about getting the vaccine in the US, I don't have American health insurance. And it was not clear to me how much it was going to cost, or if there was a cost associated and that sort of thing. And when I registered online for my appointment, they were like, you need to have a primary care physician. You need to input your insurance. And I thought, if I'm one of the millions of uninsured people in the United States who should be trying to get this vaccine, if you put these things in front of me, that might make me disinclined. Personally, I was just like, let's see what they say when I walk in there and I say, well, I don't have no insurance. I don't have any money. And I had to sign these waivers that I didn't have a doctor and I didn't have insurance. And I just thought that's an unnecessary barrier to getting the vaccine, that if you are somebody who doesn't question those kind of things, that might very well turn you away. So that struck me, and I did not like that, because it's a public health crisis and all of that good stuff. I'm like, you should be making this as easy as possible for people to get.
I don't even know if I even signed a waiver. I did it at where the Falcons play, the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, rolled up in there 15 minutes, and it only took 15 minutes because I had to walk around the whole stadium, and they're just like, here you go. I was just like, I guess I got microchipped. I don't know. Like, I just like, no papers. And I remember asking my sister, like, how much it cost? She's like, no, it's free. And I was like, oh, great, because I don't have health insurance here, which aside, everyone, this is obviously important to have maybe some international coverage, especially I'll say for my situation where I had to come stateside, and I've been stateside a lot longer than I thought I would ever be stateside. I didn't even think I was going to come back to the States this year. Make sure that you have some international coverage, y'all. Don't be like me. I preach it. Do it, actually. So we have Taylor here. So Taylor, how are you?
Hi, is there feedback? Is there
No.
Oh, okay, I put on my headphones. Hi, I've been stateside since early March, and I moved back from South Korea. Yeah, COVID was a big reason for that, just like not knowing when I would be able to visit home again. And then it seemed like Korea in the beginning was one of the, at first it was like, oh, you're from Korea, you're living in Korea, ooh, Korea. Because I visited my family in the UK in February, like literally the week of our like first outbreak in Daegu. And that was like, oh, like, why are you're from Korea, there must be bad things. But it seemed like Korea was dealing with it really well compared to the States, where people like just in March were kind of thinking about the pandemic seriously, but not really. Like we had been wearing masks since like late February of 2020. So it felt like Korea was the best place to be in that respect. But as time went on, yeah, there was no serious lockdown. So like people in the States, like, stay in your house, don't come out, nobody's working. I worked continuously. I was a part-time teacher, and then I moved into a management position at a academy for adults teaching English. And yeah, we worked every day. So as far as like pausing, there was none of that. So that was difficult and concerning when we'd hear, oh, this client tested positive, or the whisper, like did I have close contact, or people were just kind of being hush hush about it. Oh, I had a friend who I went to lunch with whose sister had it. It was, yeah. So I'm glad I've been vaccinated since being home. So I'm glad that was available. My friends back in Korea, yeah, they're like, yeah, we're not sure. They said this time. They keep pushing it back. Right after I left, they had the mandate in Seoul. They wanted to force all of the foreigners to get tested, which caused a lot of even international attention of how like racist that looked. It was bad. So I wish I didn't have to come back, but I'm glad in that sense.
Was your main motivating factor was like South Korea's response to COVID and not vaccinated?
That wasn't the main. The main thing was, it was just like an immense like homesickness. Usually I can go home every year. I'll go to the UK, I'll go stateside, but it had been over a year since I was home. Some family stuff was going on, and it just felt like my job was changed. It just felt like, okay, I don't know when. Instead of waiting for things to get better, I don't know when that would be. So it just seemed like the right choice, and it was hard, but I'm glad that I did. So
It's like, do you feel like your experience in seeing how South Korea handled COVID, like if you want to go back abroad, do you feel like you have more of a discerning eye? Do you feel like there will be more things you'll be looking at, like politically or healthcare wise, for your next location if you return to South Korea?
Like I don't see myself returning to South Korea to live, but like right now I'm in the space of like country shopping, of like, where am I going next? I plan to continue my expat lifestyle. I've actually been watching a lot of your podcasts and your YouTube videos, Picky Girl Travel. So yeah, I was like, oh my God. Yeah, I've been like,
Sounds like I say country shopping.
yeah, I really loved your content. So yes, hi. But yeah, it's been a big thing. It's like, okay, they said 2 shots. Now they're like, is there 3? So I kind of want to at least have a little more information before I just pack up and go. COVID has made everything 10 steps more difficult, and it has made me feel like, okay, as far, I live an expat lifestyle because I feel safer outside of the States. Coming back has been a whirlwind of like, oh, gun violence and racism and all this, this is scary. But it's also like when I go outside, I'm at the bottom of the barrel. Like I could not be vaccinated in Korea right now.
Yeah.
And no one would be concerned of whether I got vaccinated or not. So those are things that I have. It's going to play a role in where I go next.
Really? I mean, the fact that, you can't get vaccinated, and for me, living in Spain, when they're just like, it's fine, let in all the foreigners, we're not testing anyone, tourism, and you're like, I don't work in tourism, and so I just stay in my house, which does something to you psychologically when you feel like you're being like gaslit from the government, because you're like, I see the numbers, I follow science people, but the government's like, no, you guys go to the terrace, drink some wine. But then you're like, what's happening? What's happening?
Right.
It's just insane. And then, being stateside is, I mean, I feel like we could do a whole conversation on just being stateside because
definitely
gun violence. But so is, and this is for Adelia. Let me get it. Like this week. All the chemicals. It tastes so good. It tastes so good.
Not Jiffy. I wonder, may I ask about people in Mexico with the masks? Coming back to the States, it's been like, whoa, people don't want to wear masks. People are so anti. Living in Asia, I was wearing masks before because there's the pollution. It's also like, I don't want people to see my face. So I wear a mask out of the house. Like I love masks. What is it like in Mexico?
I was not a mask wearer when I first moved to China because I would be like, does that really work? But, when they were like, okay, you got to wear a mask if you're going to go in this place and we scan your code. And I was like, okay, fine. I even made myself like 12, 14 masks while we were still in lockdown in China because I was like, this is going to be the reality. Here, there needs to be more education about how to wear them because this, because I'll try and I'll pull mine up on my nose, making eye contact, hoping they realize so there are a lot of people. I think one study said something like 60 or 80% of Mexicans were wearing them improperly, but they were wearing them. The intent, you feel it. They are trying. Whereas when I was in the US, while I was there for the month to get vaccinated, I visited New Orleans and I was just blown away by how many people in the middle of March were walking around without a mask, or the mask was in their pocket and they would pull it out just if it was someplace that required. To me, the attitude in the US was, I'll wear it if you make me. Whereas in Mexico, it's like, okay, I will wear the mask. Quite possibly they will wear it incorrectly. But nobody is fighting you when you say, no, uso cubreboca, use your mask. Nobody's fighting you over that. It's like, oh, okay, sorry, I forgot. So yes, no, that struck out to me big time. And of course, then I think the state of Texas was just getting to the point where they were like, okay, nobody has to wear masks. And now in the last couple of days, the state of Texas has said that if a government entity, a school, a university, what has you, has a mask mandate, they will be fined. They cannot require masks.
This country is insane.
Yes.
It's so insane. It's so insane what people think their rights are. This is coming from someone who is actually legally trained. I went to law school, I have a JD. A lot of people think they have rights that they don't have. It's almost as if people haven't actually read the Constitution, or
they haven't.
It's very fascinating, the rights people think they have, but more so than just rights, it's really disheartening the lack of community and the lack of humanity. And why is it such a fight. It's so bizarre to me to wear a mask.
What I didn't understand, but the pandemic has made crystal clear for me, is the idea of American exceptionalism, how pivotal that is to American culture, and the idea of American individualism. This idea that I matter more than the collective, like you said, that lack of community. The idea that my actions impact other people, it has opened my eyes really this last year and a half. I haven't liked what I've seen. I actually ended up leaving the US a couple of days early because I literally went into a restaurant and the workers were not wearing masks. And I was just like, on y'all. And I was just like, because it was making me feel like, well, I literally can't go anywhere or do anything because I got to play defense this whole time.
Yes.
And so I was like, you know what, let me just go home.
It's also the fact that this is about, it's definitely the American exceptionalism, people, us who like live abroad, but it's also the fact that they were tackling people, Black people, for not wearing masks. They were arresting, pulling people off trains, you know, when I was still in Korea, in New York, those kind of things. So it's like, this is very specific. Once, like my mom has a theory, once the Surgeon General got up in front during the past administration and said, you know, abuela and pop, white people heard, this isn't our fight.
Yes.
It's not us, it's them. We have to wear masks because of them. My right, because Black people know about not having rights. And that's why it's great when that's why I always encourage Black Americans to live abroad, because when they ask, what about the racism? You know what it's like to be discriminated against. It's the white Americans who have a problem with no foreigners allowed. We're like, oh, okay, well, we'll just go do something else. You know, at least I'm not being killed. At least I'm not being gaslit. They're telling me I'm a foreigner to my face. Like, we're able to adapt in those places. And so being here, I'm just cringing at the thought. I'm like, I'm going to wear my mask. So I really hope that no one feels the need to approach me.
Well, see, and that's my concern. Like this thing in Texas, now that they have said that certain industries, state-run industries, cannot have a mask mandate. If I'm somebody and I am choosing to wear a mask, am I now opening myself up to potential violence from these people who are like, oh, you shouldn't be wearing that?
Yes. They're encouraging
so
people on Fox News to do that. Tucker Carlson, Tuckums, he's encouraging people to, like, attack people. My thing is, mind your business. Just if you see someone with a mask, you don't want to wear a mask, that's your business. Living in Las Vegas, everyone comes here. It's like, oh, okay, they just removed the mask mandate for vaccinated people. We don't know what that means.
We're on the honor system. We're going to believe these people that they're vaccinated. These same people who screamed and yelled for an entire year about being forced to wear a mask, but yeah, they're vaccinated, sure.
The honor United States.
Yeah.
I don't get the fatigue because, like, I can look at like people in South Korea and being like, okay, they wore masks for a year. They did. And they're still wearing masks. But the fatigue in the States, you didn't wear a mask. No one really forced you to wear a mask. Like, so where is the fatigue?
Locked down. Like they were not locked down. Like, I'm in Atlanta, so obviously this place has been open the whole entire time. Do hookah? You can do hookah.
Hookah up.
Like, it was not locked down in any capacity, and people have this fatigue, and they don't really recognize or appreciate people who are actually for real locked into their house.
Yes.
You could not leave. You had to have an app or a piece of paper. You could only go to the grocery store.
Wow.
Some countries, you could only go to the grocery store, have it delivered to your house.
Mm-hmm.
they don't get it. And it's just like, wow. And you're so tired. And I'm like, that's the problem. Like you said, Adelia, it's so individualistic here. And it's like, we can never progress as society because we don't actually care about the common man. You don't care about somebody else's grandma or someone else who has who's immune compromised. You literally don't care. And
or just yourself. Like, I'm worried about the long-term effects of COVID. We don't know what this is.
That's a whole other thing, because nobody is talking about that.
I don't know
that's ever present for me.
I don't know what the world's gonna have left when I'm in my 50s. We might not have no water, but I would like not to be able to, I don't know, like, I'm not trying to shoot myself in the foot already, like.
But you know what, Christine? The one place the American individualism paid off was in the vaccine thing.
Yeah.
This, when I told you that capitalism won here, because no other country, now in the beginning of the rollout in the US, they fumbled the ball a little bit, but no other country has had vaccine supplies in the way that the United States has had. And why is that? Because that same individualism was like, okay, we hope y'all have a drug in 12 months to 18 months, but here, we're going to go ahead and pay you and put dibs on it just in case. So that is, I will give them that. That is the one time that individualism paid off, because, you know, now you got Ohio giving away millions of dollars trying to entice people to get vaccinated. Because they've got shots, but nobody wants them.
My friends abroad, they cannot believe that we're trying to convince you to get the vaccine. I mean, obviously there's other countries that are kind of vaccine, you know, I don't know what the word would be, apprehensive, like France. But that, and they can't believe that for the most part, I mean, if you want, in the United States, you can pick which one you want. And
yes.
In some centers, they ask you, you want that Moderna? You want that Johnson & Johnson? You want that Pfizer? And you can be like, okay, I want that. They literally are like, what? Like in Europe, they're like, what do you mean you can choose? It's like, because we get to have 5 million types of peanut butter. We get all the things here. That's what happens. I feel a certain kind of way, because it's like, there are countries like Honduras, they're probably not going to see a vaccine unless some country like the United States gives them vaccines, because they're never going to be able to outbid someone. They're not.
Outbid, wow.
No, they're not. And right now the United States is sitting on millions of doses of AstraZeneca, and I don't understand why they won't let them go, because AstraZeneca isn't approved in the US. So
it's greed.
Everybody is connected. So as things are horrible in Central America, those people make their way up through Mexico to get to the United States. But you know, if you would help, maybe throw them some vials of AstraZeneca, that maybe society could kind of get back to normal. Maybe the economic situation could improve so that fewer people would feel the need to try and get to the United States. Like,
absolutely.
Experience. It keeps on. I mean, this is insanity, and it is. I mean, it's inhumane. It's inhumane. And I think what's crazy is that I think the Europeans are starting to see how inhumane, because usually they're like in cahoots, but because they're like, they're like, wait, y'all can't just be hoarding stuff. And it's like, yeah, this is how we do things. And they're like, but you're gonna come to us too. And they're like, no, you're not, we're not cool. Like, so I think they're starting to really get it. Maybe they're starting who knows? I don't know.
Because I was hoping through this, like, the pandemic has been horrible. It's been atrocious. It's been disheartening. On the other hand, there have been opportunities for people to kind of see a different reality, to imagine, people who are starting businesses, people who have been able to stay away from toxic situations, those kind of things. However, I wondered what the global community if there was ever going to be a shift, because I feel like Americans will not feel the incentive to get vaccinated unless there are travel bans against us. And these are things that people don't like to talk about because we don't like to tell white people what they can and can't do. I get it.
People don't like to hear it.
I was just gonna say
they
that
don't
they
like
don't
to
like
hear
to
it.
be told.
They don't like to be told. We don't like to tell them. But it's also when you make standards, that's what the government does. They govern. You tell them you can't go in here unless you have a mask. And guess what people do? You can't get served unless you wear a shirt and shoes. What do? You wear a shirt and shoes so you can eat in a restaurant. These are things we've already given up, certain rights that we have. So I wondered what the international community has thought of the states, and if their view was shifting of like just kind of how greedy and self-centered we are. I think there's two Americas. But anyway, when I say the states.
There are two Americas. There are. But I think that was the original plan. But money talks. And the reality is because I keep seeing these articles about who's going to be allowed into Europe. And the reality is they want the tourism money. It is why Mexico never closed.
Right.
Despite the fact that there would be story after story of American coming here, refusing to wear a mask, blatantly engaging in activity that was putting other people at danger, the government just they were like, we need the money. We can't afford to keep them out. So I think money won out. Also, I think the reaction from Americans was not, I guess I'll get vaccinated. It was, how dare they require me to be vaccinated to visit their country? I've seen far more of that.
Okay.
That's anecdotal, but that was very much the reaction I've seen in different travel groups and things like that.
Wow. Okay.
Definitely. I mean, last summer when Spain, it was a horrible summer, but it was a great summer. I mean, if you guys could have visited, that was the time you should come to Barcelona, because there wasn't anybody in the city. It's the appropriate amount of people in the city. It was great. But the British were still allowed to come, and they acted a damn fool. And y'all know, don't even come for me, because people be like, Americans are horrible tourists. But guess what? Like, Americans can't go to so many places in Europe. But Brits sure as hell can. And they
picked up the slack.
Oh, yes, especially to Spain, because it's like a cheap option. They refused to wear masks last summer. And the Spanish were like, I mean, it's buy stuff, so it's okay. And that was what was really eye-opening for me, because there are levels to the white privilege and supremacy and things like that. And, these Southern European countries are at the bottom of the barrel. The more are to, these tourism dollars, you have the Germans come to Mallorca to do whatever they want. The French come. France was in a full lockdown. Right. They could come to Madrid.
Really?
And they went to dinner, and they had illegal parties. And they broke up the parties. They fined them, but they're not going to enforce them. It was a whole mess of white people games. Just white people games. And I'm at home being like, I want to move. Like, I was trying to move to Valencia, and I was like too afraid. I want to break the rules. It's like, It's been crazy. But I'll pause for 1 second. For those of you that have joined the chat, hello, welcome. We're talking about the COVID response. We're talking about the vaccine rollout around the world. So if you are abroad and you want to come and join us and tell us what your experience has been abroad, if you want to talk about the vaccine rollout or the COVID response, just press request to join. I don't know. Just join. Or you can put in a question and tell us what you guys are thinking. We're getting kind of heated here because, you know what, white supremacy is global, and if you don't know that, you will, no matter where you go, even to the continent. Okay, it's real. Let us see. Janelle McBride, hello. She says America is reactive when it comes to healthcare instead of proactive, like in most other countries. Ooh. America says, why should we pay for you to be healthy? How does that benefit us? So it's like, what? What do you mean?
Not when we can sell you medication.
Right.
That is the thing. And aside from that, very strange aside, when that Harry and Meghan whole video, whatever interview came out, with the biggest response besides, oh, the royal family's racist, what most of the responses I saw were that people like Europeans, especially Brits, they were appalled by the amount of pharmaceutical commercials that were just allowed. They're like, why are pharmaceuticals talking to the patient? Your doctor should give you. Why are you going?
The U.S. is one of a very small number of countries that allows that. It's like 2 or 3 countries in the world that allow that. It's not allowed anywhere else because it's not good for patients.
They were just like, so if your leg itches, you tell the doctor you want this pharmaceutical and they just give it to you. They were appalled. And like, and you don't even have health insurance? They were appalled. They were appalled because that is the reality of this very, very interesting country. Anyone else want to join the conversation at all? I do have some other questions. Let me see. What did I say? Let's talk about this. Because, okay, 2 things. I was under the impression, and I have read an article from The Atlantic about private U.S. citizens not having access to the vaccines that the U.S. embassies, consulates, and the military bases were providing for U.S. public servants. But just yesterday, when I posted this Instagram post, let me see if I can find her, if she's here. Miss Kiana, if you're here, thank you for posting. She says, I'm currently in the Middle East and was finally able to get my first vaccination at a military base.
Okay.
I was about going back to the States to get the vaccine when I found out I could get it. I was shocked because I was like, what? Is this a new?
Not here. Not here. The U.S. Embassy, the State Department, because I've signed up for STEP, so I get all the emails.
Okay.
They sent out multiple emails and said, we will not be vaccinating anybody in Mexico. Basically, your option is to go to the U.S. or if you have residency,
wow,
get in line with everybody else in Mexico. No, that was not available here.
Okay, so let's talk about this because United States is the only country except for Eritrea, I think, that requires you to file and pay taxes worldwide, regardless if you are in the country or not. Most countries, if you're in the country, you don't gotta pay taxes, but you also lose, some rights to vote and things like that. I think the UK is one of those countries. My thing is like, so we're getting taxation.
Wow, yeah.
Because we have all these associations and things like that, but also without any public health, like.
You don't get public health at home. Why are you going to get it abroad?
But now we're getting away. I can't be like, we got everybody who signed for STEP. We got you. Da 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 da. I'm really like I shouldn't be surprised, but I'm just like, then what is the whole point of me paying taxes to like what's going on? I don't
get your tax money. They hope not to give you anything in return for it. At least that's my take on the situation, which is why I work for them to get virtually nothing from me. Because I know they don't want to give me anything.
No, nothing. That's interesting because I just saw there was a woman who we were in the same teaching program my first year in Korea, and she just posted about getting vaccinated on the military base. Now, I don't believe she's retired military, but yeah, that was the first I had heard. Literally, when I was leaving Korea, that was right when the US passed that you had to show a negative COVID test before getting on the flight. So I called the airline and asked them what kind of test would be acceptable. They said, we don't know. Talk to your embassy. I called the embassy and a lady picked up And I told her the situation. She said, hold on, because I called right when they opened. She said, hold on. There was an automated message. There was no one I could talk to. So I had to I missed my first flight because they wouldn't let me on. I got tested at one of those like tent testing places. They sent me a text message. The airline said no. And I said, I called y'all. And they said, tough. And I was like, and there was no one I could talk to at the embassy. So I really, it felt to me that, I don't know, but it felt like the previous administration had cut people and just, I didn't know that I was there alone until that moment right before I was leaving. Because I was like, if I didn't have the money to rebook a flight, if I didn't have the money to go from this hospital to that hospital to this hospital, like I could still be there now.
People overestimate what obligations the embassies or the consulates have to you. That became very apparent living in China when people were like, well, we want to get out. Are there going to be evacuation flights? And they were like, okay, we're going to do one. It's up to you to get there. And yeah, they're $5,000. And if you don't have the cash, we will lend it to you, but we will invalidate your passport until you can pay us back.
Whoa.
Yes. I had no idea that, like, because I wasn't trying to leave, but I was, following the information. And so, no, that's when it became apparent to me that I don't know if we come to this conclusion on our own or if we've been led to believe that outside the United States, the State Department is going to help us. No. They will make you aware of information, but they're really, it's you on your own.
I was shocked.
I got to do an
wow.
The foreign service officers that follow the show and that I don't know how much they can talk, but like we gotta have, at least we need to have a frank conversation just to have it, just for it to be in the books, so people really understand what the embassy does and what it's there for. In my estimation, it's there to notarize my documents at an exorbitant price. That's what. And I mean, that's what it is. I'm glad I don't need it for anything else. I obviously will when my passport expires, but yeah. And that leads us to something that we talked about, Adelia, several times on YouTube and on the podcast, which is always making sure you have FU money. And sometimes the U is the country that you're in, that you can't fill out.
That's real.
You have got to, and that, oh my gosh, watching that unfold from China, where there was a mom of, I think her baby was like 2. The husband and the baby had gotten out. She was trying to wait so she could get her final paycheck, was allowed to book a flight that transited through Hong Kong, despite the fact that nobody could enter Hong Kong if they didn't have a resident permit. So she gets to the airport, because at this time, China had restricted all international flights to specific airports. So she gets to Shanghai only to discover that, no, you can't get on that flight. The one you can get on is in a week, and that's going to be another $3,000. And she literally had no more money.
Wow.
And had to come on Facebook, had to go into WeChat to see if people could send her money. And, what prices did, so yeah, no, you gotta have that money just in case. I'm sorry, y'all. You gotta have that money that if you need to get out of Dodge, you can get out.
That's real. That's absolutely real.
That if there's nothing else we learned about that from the pandemic, that is it. You've got to be able to get out and have the money to do that.
Absolutely. And before I moved to Busan, I was in Seoul for about 2 years, and I was working part-time teacher, had made just enough to pay my rent. And the month after I moved to Busan for a management position, all of the schools that I was working for, the whole company shut down in Seoul. They were on, like, so the government picked certain companies, like bars had to close, certain academies had to close. So people had no notice. Like we were doing like unpaid days, you know, here and there, but they shut down for like a month. And I knew if I would have been there, I would not have been able to pay my rent, let alone get a plane ticket, let alone pay for like a replacement. I had to pay for my COVID test, the one from the hospital, and the results. I had a friend who, when I got back to the States, he started messaging me because I did a live, like, hey guys, I'm back. This is what happened to me. He's like, I've been trying to leave. He was trying to go to like Kazakhstan or something. And he's like, they're making me get a COVID test because of the mandate. They ran out of tests, so I couldn't do it. I can't get on my flight now because they're not letting me get on because I don't have a COVID test. His visa expired. Now they're charging him for the visa. And it's just kind of like depending on who's the border patrol at the time. Like it might be $100, it might be $200. They might ban you for a couple of years. Like horror. And there was nothing you could do. Like,
and this is real. This is why it's so important to talk about it, because I think, you know, we all have beautiful pictures from our country of residence and, you know, drinking wine, and it's great. It's great. It's great. I'm not gonna lie. It's great. Yeah, living to the measure you see is dope. Yes. But this is real life. Life does not stop because you live abroad in capacity. So like, during COVID, everybody was breaking up and getting divorced. So you may have gotten divorced during COVID, and you have to deal with that. Was your visa attached to your partner? And now they're like,
wow.
You have to figure out how you're going to go. Do you have access to your accounts? All these different types of things. This is so important to not just try to escape to some place. It is so important to be intentional about what your aim is when you go abroad, so you handle yourself in that capacity. You're not trying to move just to be like on vacation forever, because you won't always be on vacation. Shit happens. And so making sure you have your ducks in a row, you're not fleeing with a hobo bag and a stick, is important. It's important because life happens, and you do not want to be stuck out there when you're not trying to be out there, because it turns really quick. Like, oh, I'm out here, and then you're like, oh wait, I'm really out here and I don't want to be. Like, it changes really, really quick. Please, people who are listening, if you're trying to go abroad, please be intentional. Please have some sense. You need to learn and go to Dahlia's page, Picky Girls Travels, and her blog. She's going to help finances in order. You need to really consume content from people who are giving the real deal, who are not just selling you Instagram pictures of like drinking out of a coconut. And it's delicious. I love drinking out of fresh coconut. Everybody does. But like, real life happens. And I don't want y'all to be, I don't want the worst to happen. And it may happen anyway, but it's so important to be prepared and to have your eyes wide open. Like, you're still on planet Earth, you know? Like, you're not on a different planet, so shit can still happen, you know?
On 2 different occasions, my old shit fund, came in handy when I was in Kuwait, and those shenanigans were happening, and the people I worked with had to put up with that crap because they didn't have the financial options to leave. I was able to leave. And then again in China, because I ended up trying to get on a chartered flight, which was very expensive to begin with. Well, because some people said some things publicly about the Chinese government that they shouldn't have said, they grounded the charter flight. Oh. Because I stay ready so I don't have to get ready. As those shenanigans were going on, I got on United, booked me a flight. You know, it turns out I have absolutely refused to calculate how much money it actually cost me to get out of China, because I know how mad that number is going to make me, because the charter flight that was canceled, I didn't get a refund.
Oh, no.
I won't go into what I got I got like a 30% refund because there was some legal things and all this, and I was trying not to be a horrible person and call my credit card and be like, give me my money back because somebody put their personal money on the line. And but just know to say, it cost me a whole lot of money to get out of China. But what was the alternative? If I did not have my money together, I would have had to stay there probably at least for another year because I would have to get another job, somebody to sponsor me with a visa because China is not a place that you can be without a visa, and that was not the life I was trying to live at the moment. So yeah, you gotta always have that money so that you can get out of Dodge, no matter what.
That is so good. Like I moved to Korea kind of like that. Just like I thought I'd go to Japan. I knew I was going somewhere, but I didn't plan at all. There was no this pandemic was a blessing and a curse because it like forced me to be like, oh, I'm not moving in kind of any direction. I'm just chilling in Korea. And so that last job was the only reason I had the funds to get out. And I didn't know, it never crossed my mind that I wouldn't be able to leave until I was out. And I was like, oh, this, like a couple more months, like this could have been a completely different situation. That's really important.
You can either have no plan or no money, but you can't have no plan and no money.
That's real. That's real.
You can't
do
both.
That's a word.
I'm gonna buy that one too. That's a t-shirt because I mean the thing is that so many things can happen. I mean, a place like Spain, people don't realize that a lot of the people live in apartments because they live in cities. They don't actually live in houses for the most. Some rooms that they consider they consider rooms in Spain. It can have no window and no closet. And you're just like, what? You're just not a room. Like, yeah, it's a room. Yeah, this is a room. You can live here. And it's like, and people were stuck in those situations. There's so many things to think about. Everybody wants to leave and be like, oh, I'm gonna go to the cheapest place. My thing's cool. You want to engage in some ethical geo arbitrage, cool, whatever. That's your life. You want to live in a hammock, whatever you want to do is fine. But really be realistic. And that's my whole thing about this kind of escapism that's kind of in this trend of leaving and moving abroad. I'm like, don't do that. Don't do that. Be prepared. Really be intentional about the life you're actually trying to live, so you know which direction you're going in, and you know when you're off that path, you know you need to make a change, and you're able to do that. And you're not stuck. There's a lot of people stuck. We have Pope Daniels. I guess who this? Some American engineers have been stuck in Asia for the past year. Let alone, I think this happened in Asia. Was it Japan? People's visas were canceled because everything was shut down and people were out of work and their work was attached to their visa. And they were kicking people out of countries.
There were schools a lot of, in Korea at least, a lot of people are teachers. And so, if your Hagwon, if your academy, which is a private business, shuts down, and that's what, I was starting to look at, if this company goes under, I don't have a visa in this country. And if they cancel it, you're just kind of there. Americans can be in the country for 3 months without a visa. We can be there on a tourist visa. But if you're from another country or you just don't have the funds, I didn't realize, but I was days before my visa had expired. I didn't, anyway, I left really quickly. I left within 4 weeks, and I was like, okay, I'm going to decide. I decided within 24 hours. I finished my contract. I was out, but a lot of people were and are still in really hard situations because they can't do what they used to do.
All right, ladies, we have gone an hour and 20 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much for sticking around. I'm going to open it up one last time. If you have any questions, concerns, comments, thoughts, This is the time to put it in the comments. If you guys want to talk about the country you're thinking about moving to and maybe how they've been handling things, and you want to bring that up for discussion. You want to talk about how Japan is still trying to have the Olympics. I don't know why they're trying to.
Japan is still only vaccinating like really old people, like in their 70s. I don't know how they're going to be ready.
Japan has had so many issues. They had like the wrong needles for the longest time. They've been having so many issues. They were just like, it seemed to me like all of their mental power was just on the Olympics.
Absolutely.
And now the residents and citizens have their little petition up. I think it might be up to 400,000 people saying cancel the Olympics.
Yes. Just
I think that was the move they should have been made, but you know how the Japanese are. You say you're going to do this, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to do it the best anybody's ever done it, regardless of the cost that we're going to have to bear for it.
Just kind of like read the room. Like I feel like people, and maybe this is a global thing, that people, instead of trying to get back, because the world will never be the same.
People are trying to go back.
Go back. It's like, look at what is and what will be. This is a different, like, I went through a depression last year. I came back home to see, my parents were in a very different state. Just everyone, we're still going through it. So give yourself that patience. And it's not going to be the same. And that's okay. We can like mourn for what we lost, but going backwards or trying to put blinders on or being fatigued or acting like covering our ears like it's not happening is not going to move you in any direction. At least that's what I came to.
I was just talking to somebody about this, how there's this rush to get back so we can be like it was. There was a lot of stuff we did pre-pandemic that we should be rethinking. Like, in the last month, I've seen somebody at a birthday party blow out the candles on the cake.
Absolutely.
Really? We're doing that?
No.
There are things like, personally, I won't be shaking anybody's hands because we really shouldn't have been doing that from the jump.
No.
But now that we know how many people don't like washing their hands, why are we trying to bring that back? We should be looking at moving forward and getting away from some of those things we had no business doing anyway.
Yes.
But I could go on.
I mean, I just want to stress to everyone who is watching that, pandemics and actually everything that happens in this world doesn't happen in a vacuum. I think this is a really good example of how things don't happen in a vacuum. Just because the United States is swimming in vaccines doesn't mean the world is opening up, because so many countries don't have vaccines or PCR tests or anything like that.
Or that we're post-COVID, because I hear people throwing that around.
Still,
we are not.
Pandemic. State of pandemic. Yes.
Yeah, it is so important to just be mindful. There's this one last question, then we're going to wrap it up. I'm curious as to how your travels have changed during COVID. I just got on a plane for the first time in a year and maybe more, in April. I was freaked out, but it was great because there's nobody on the plane flying down. I was flying first class. It felt amazing. Everybody was spread out that was even on the plane. Everybody was very polite to the flight attendants, wore their masks, but we were coming from Europe to the United States, so there's that. And the flight attendants kept the wine flowing, so it was great. I don't know how that Europe is opening to Americans when I leave. I don't know how it's going to be, but it was great. It was actually less stressful than I thought it was going to be.
No, that is not what it is like to fly between the U.S. and Mexico. Not at all. When my travels have changed in that being stuck in China has made me very skittish. So primarily my travels have been in Mexico because I need to be someplace I want to be in case I get locked out. And right now that place is Mexico. But I have flown to the U.S. to vote. and then to get vaccinated. And I purposely picked a 5 a.m. flight, foolishly thinking that, oh, nobody's going to want to get up that early. Yes, everybody was up. The flight was full. There was no space. Coming back from the U.S. to Mexico City, they did not deplane back to front. There was no more social distancing. It was basically, it was back to the way it used to be.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I am less inclined to take a long haul flight anywhere.
Absolutely. That was, yeah. I took 2 different flights from Korea to LA. It was spread out Asiana, but people were still, I chose not to eat on the flight. I just didn't want to remove my mask at all. There were people that I looked around, even though we were spread out, people had taken off their mask in the plane. Not the point. But when I got into LA, the flight was full from LA to Vegas, full. And people, American people, pale people, were very, because it's Vegas. I hate getting on Vegas flights anyway, because everyone's like, we're not Vegas. But people were not wearing their masks, and no one was telling them to. So I felt very uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable. And that was in March of this year. Yeah.
If you have the time, we're getting questions now. And I asked y'all to ask questions earlier. Okay. How is China now for tourists, especially Black? I don't know if anyone can really speak to China now. I mean, maybe.
I don't know that tourists can get into China now. But I will say this time last year, the narrative in China started to turn. And it was foreigners were bringing in the virus.
Talk about it.
And we were talking earlier about, as Black Americans, we are uniquely equipped to handle discrimination in other countries because, we learned in one of the, we learned from the best discriminators there are. And to hear the white people I work with be irate about, they wouldn't let me in because I was a foreigner, and they made me do this because I was a foreigner. And I'm just sitting there like, that's my everyday life. So yeah, who knows what it's like now, but I don't think that the border situation is such that they're allowing tourists, definitely not from the US. I think.
Yeah. Okay. Y'all know I don't wear my glasses during things because I try to be cute. Okay. The person said they want to know how has, I guess, travel in general changed us individually as people, exposure-wise. Anyone?
It has made me less inclined to return to the United States.
Okay.
It's
made me, I don't want to be here. I'm in the States currently. I don't want to be here, but it's made me more cautious about where I go next and leaving and like wanting, I really don't know. And I know my parents are like, so when you leaving? I'm glad I got my passport renewed right when I got here. I'm glad I didn't try to do it in Korea. I probably still would be sitting there. But yeah, I'm ready to go, but I'm also being more cautious about where I go next. So, because if I were still in Korea, I would not be vaccinated now. So yeah. I'm glad that I'm vaccinated.
That's the biggest thing. It's like your safety and your well-being. I think generally travel, it obviously changes your perspective. You are in a culture that is not yours, and so you learn a different way of life. You see how life can be, and people can be completely quote unquote opposite or different, and yet they are still breathing, living, and thriving. So I think that's the biggest thing about travel, is that you see there's so many different ways to live life, and you can actually try on different ways that maybe are better suited for you.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'll echo everyone's sentiment. Like, travel is not high on my list, but I am going back to Spain. And because I'm not staying here. I'm in Atlanta too, which is a blue dot and a huge red ass. Like, okay, I gotta go. Happening here. I'm just like, I live right brain cannot compute. Like I think I look like, I don't know, just dumb. People are just like, do you understand English? I'm like, I thought I did, but y'all
Yeah.
understand what's going on. So I'll be going back to Spain, but I will be thinking about, possibly moving from Spain in the next year, 2 years, maybe, because Spain is cool, but I don't know. And, there's a whole world also. All right, I think those are all the questions. Okay, now you guys are asking me stuff. Okay, Dante says, do y'all get stopped and checked often? Like racially profiled?
In the street?
Yeah, in the streets, I guess.
No.
But some of the guests I've had in Madrid have gotten racially profiled and asked for their papers.
Oh.
And they got their American passport, and then they, do the humna thing, like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
he was like, okay, but I haven't been racially profiled in Spain, so nope.
No.
Yeah.
Like certain places when I lived in Korea, like you couldn't go in. There were certain bars you couldn't go into. They'd say no foreigners. One time they did look at my alien resident card to see when my visa ended, and it was like, well, that's not the point. But okay, that kind of thing, but not stopped.
Yeah.
No. Here, the cops don't want to work. So they don't. It's like, we don't bother you if you don't bother us. So, I give them a head nod or whatever, which is nothing I would ever do in the United States, but I wouldn't interact with the police.
Right.
I would go out of my way to avoid it. But no, have never been. The only time I ever got asked for papers, I was in a touristy part of the country, and some people got on the bus and they asked, because I think they're trying to crack down on Central Americans, Haitians, Africans who are coming up this way.
Interesting.
But it was more of like, it wasn't just me. They were looking at lots of people's papers. Nobody has ever just stopped me or harassed me or anything like that.
Okay.
Yeah. But I mean, anti-blackness is global, y'all. So
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Pope Daniels says, I'm from the UK. I think that's the UK. Yes, I'm from the UK. I'm curious about other Black people's views of the world. Well, then you should be listening to Flourish in the Foreign, a podcast that celebrates the voices and stories of Black women from across the diaspora, living and thriving around the world, explores living abroad as a pathway to wellness. Wellness, you say? Yes, wellness. We talk about financial wellness, mental, physical, all the wellnesses that people who move abroad can really engage in. And sometimes they do it intentionally, and sometimes it's just a happy kind of coincidence that they surrender to the experience so they can embark in that wellness. So if you have not checked out the podcast, you should, because that would answer all of your questions, Pope Daniels. Rebloom Room says Mexican cops get paid less than peanuts. They have to buy their own uniforms. Oh, so they're not really trying to work. Yeah.
Yeah, no. I've been, like, in the past week, I've been talking about some of the, because what you will see in the general Facebook groups about Mexico is people saying, I was walking down this neighborhood and a cop extorted me. And I'm not going to deny that that's a thing. It is a thing because they're not paid anything. And I just keep coming back to the idea, this is a country with so much potential. If they could find the money, which they should have, to pay cops more, cops would be less inclined to be corrupt. And then, like all these trickle down kind of things. So yeah, no, they are not paid next to anything.
Wow.
They really aren't. But I can say that this is one of the times that looking like this comes in handy, because when they're looking for somebody to extort, I'm not the person they're looking for.
You see?
Racism hurts everybody. Grace hurts everybody.
Hey, lean into it. Feel
I
like,
don't mind about it.
Yep.
a negra, don't worry about me. Um, Thank you so much for just jumping on. This is very impromptu. Thank you guys so much
Thank you.
for your time. Thank you so much for sharing your experience, because I really feel like this conversation has to be had. People really got to take off the rose tinted glasses. It doesn't mean that you don't get to like enjoy your life abroad. It's just we want you to sustain your life abroad. That's the whole point. So I hope it's helpful to all of you. Please check out Taylor. You have a YouTube channel, right? Tell us about your YouTube channel.
I do have a YouTube channel. The thing is, my YouTube channel isn't about travel. So what I talk about is just like social issues, empowerment, motivation, just things that I find that are important. I speak to specifically Black women, but everybody can listen. But yeah, I found such freedom living abroad. It's a lifestyle. So sometimes I've had my trouble finding my place in the travel community because I'm not touristy. I don't really like doing any of that stuff. But when people say I don't like living in the States, it's like, okay, you don't have to stay here just because our people were brought here against our will. That's fine. So I feel like travel is a way that I honor my ancestors. Talking about things that I want to talk about, especially for Black women, is great because the world loves to be in our business and tell us what we can't talk about or what's not in our lane. So I talk about it all. So yeah. And that's Taylor M. Rivers on Instagram, and my Instagram is uniquely_Rivers_.
Awesome. And Adelia, tell us where we can find you and what kind of content that you create.
I do have a YouTube channel, Picky Girl Travels the World. It's about the expat lifestyle. It's about finances. It's about solo travel, kind of where all of those paths cross each other. I'm also on IG, obviously. Picky Girl Travels, and most places is that. But if you want to get content that's about, and the podcast is also up on the YouTube channel. And the podcast is specifically about sharing the stories of and how-tos for Black women who want to live life on their terms, no matter what that looks like, whether it is travel, living abroad, or maybe, it's starting a Burger King empire in the United States. I don't know. But it's about being free and comfortable enough to do that.
Awesome. You guys know this is Flourish in the Foreign. I did my little plug, but be sure to check out the podcast. I'm actually dropping another episode because I was like MIA. I already dropped 2 this week. I'm actually going to be dropping more and more episodes this week. Yes, it's just like a Flourish in the Foreign banana. Healthy binge. So be sure to check out the podcast, check out the YouTube channel where I have interviews with amazing guests talking about really how to thrive abroad. If you have any questions, feel free to DM me. If you're interested in building a business abroad, I am a business strategist and I have a free guide called Build a Business Abroad. Exactly what it's called. And you can find it and you can get it for free via the link in my Instagram or on the website www.flourishintheforeign.com. If that's up your alley, if you're like, I want to leverage my talents and my expertise into a valuable online business so you can thrive abroad while being professionally fulfilled, financially abundant, get at me and get out my guide. All right, that is all for today. Thank you, ladies, so much.
Thank you
guys for stopping by. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Hey, y'all.